Hey, how's it going, everybody? It's RC Maxfield here for the Back to 12 podcast live. We're going to be doing a once a week live stream here on the channel. It's going to be on Thursdays typically, and we are going to talk Texas Tech, obviously, some things in the Big 12 as well when it comes down to it, and a whole lot more. If you want to have your question answered and have it up on the screen, all you got to do is hit that dollar button under the chat to help support the channel as well. But I want to hear from you guys before we get into anything else. Give me your score prediction for Texas Tech up in Wyoming. And oh, by the way, hit that like button while we're at it. We got to get some people in here. Let's get this chat going. College football is back, baby. I'm excited. College football is back. Texas Tech football is back. And we're just 2 hours away from, we've got the game in Salt Lake City tonight. We've also got UCF kicking off here in about an hour, actually, in the Bounce House down in Orlando against Kent State. Got a whole lot more as well. So, again, like the video, share the video with your friends. I think I just shared it over on Twitter, so give that a retweet. Let's get as many Red Raiders and Big 12 fans in here as possible to really just chop it up right before week one of the college football season officially kicks off. I can't wait personally. It's going to be a whole lot of fun. And, let me know your prediction score-wise for Texas Tech and Wyoming. All right, let's kind of just get things going a little bit here. I want people to get in here, all right? I can see how many people are watching us right now, and it's not too many. I appreciate each and every one of y'all for being in here. Let's get that straight. But let's try and get a few more people in here. We'll talk about numerous things on today's live. I mean, it's going to be a whole lot of fun. I'm really excited about it, mostly because, football's back, as you could tell. I'm very excited about that. But also, Tyler Shuck had some interesting comments about Jerron Bradley. We'll have a Q&A where you guys can ask me anything about Texas Tech football. Maybe announce that there will be something going on next weekend in the 806 when I'm out there to watch the Oregon game. Maybe a little get-together, ? We might have that. And then I'll also look around the Big 12, see what kind of matchups interest me, maybe the ones that stand out to you as well. I know which one's going to stand out to most everybody outside of the Texas Tech one on this stream. It's probably the one down in Fort Worth where Coach Prime will make his Colorado debut against the national runner-ups in the TCU Horned Frogs. But then we'll also talk a little bit of the betting angle and give you my favorite parlay of the week. Again, ask away. Put some comments in the chat. I'm looking forward to chopping it up with you guys. Let's get this thing going. I can see, again, how many people are in here. But let's really start with this Texas Tech team headed up to Wyoming. And they leave, they've already left the 806 to go to Wyoming. Coach Joey McGuire said that they would get there a day early to get used to the altitude, go through their Friday routine that they would typically do before a game up in Wyoming, because this is going to be the highest elevated game they play all year. Now, luckily for Texas Tech, when you look at it, I know a lot of people think, it's West Texas, it's flat as hell. It's true, but also Texas Tech has some pretty solid elevation, all things considered. It's not, Colorado or even Wyoming or anything like that. But, hey, it does have some up there. And I think the real thing is when you look at this matchup for Texas Tech, I think there's a lot of things you can look at. But I've talked about it really multiple times here on the channel already this week, and it's really been the major talking point, I think, this offseason for Texas Tech. It's been the offensive line, right? And I get this feeling, and again, I think Texas Tech is super talented. I think Wyoming's a solid team too, but there's a clear talent gap between Texas Tech and Wyoming, which is obvious to everybody. But for me, when I look at Texas Tech, I want them to come out and really just show Wyoming what they're about, right? Like, be dominant, specifically in the run game. That's where I want to see things happen, because we know Texas Tech can fling the ball around the yard. Doesn't matter what quarterback's in there, whether it's Tyler Shuck, Barron Morton, it doesn't matter, right? It's obviously going to be QB1 and Tyler Shuck starting this game. But I want to see them just dictate the line of scrimmage, go out there and just be violent on that offensive line. Those guys that have multiple starts in Power 5 football at the collegiate level, every one of those guys has at least 10 starts minimum in D1 football, okay? Not to mention 9 of the 10 guys on the 2 deep for Texas Tech when it comes to the offensive line have at least 1 start, right? So we're talking about a little bit of experience, but the thing is I want to see what the interior looks like. Because here's the thing, I think the natural switch in progression for Texas Tech on the outside was pretty obvious move to make. It was just pretty obvious to me. I didn't think Caleb Rogers was a left tackle, and I thought Monroe Mills really had the potential to be a solid left tackle. So you flip those guys. That's perfect. I want to see the interior because last year Dennis Wilburn was your best lineman, and I don't know if that's a hot take, but I'm going to stand by it. Now he moves over. He's your right guard, and you insert 2 guys from Western Kentucky, one that's already been in your program for a year, just had a medical red shirt, and Cole Spencer, right? He's your left guard. Now you bring in Rusty Stats, and if you listen to the long form of the podcast here on the channel, you know how I feel about centers. Simple and plain. I think centers are the second most important player on your offense from the standpoint of quarterbacks number 1, centers number 2, because if the center cannot communicate with the offensive line, the protections and the blitzes that they see coming, well, QB1 has no chance, right? So that's the center's job, and they got a good one in Rusty Stats. I want to see from left guard to right guard, if Texas Tech can just get Taj Brooks just going, Cameron Valdez going, whoever they want to have as the third running back, whether that's White, Donnell, whoever it is, it doesn't matter to me. I want to see Texas Tech dictate the line of scrimmage, both sides of it. When they're on defense, I want the defensive line to dominate, and I fully expect them to do so. But specifically the offensive line. I want to see the offensive line and that interior just assert its dominance because, again, you're moving your best offensive lineman from a year ago to right guard, and then you get 2 guys who, in my opinion, they're automatically your best 2 offensive linemen, and Cole Spencer, who I think is one of the best offensive linemen in the conference, right? And then you get a guy in Rusty Stats at center. Dominate the offensive line of scrimmage. Just go out there, get the ball first, and you just run it down their throat. That's how I feel, right? And also this, I really kind of want to see what's going on in terms of these wide receivers because the depth chart did come out. Obviously, you've got Jerron Bradley starting, you got Dre McCray, you got Miles Price, and then you got Loic Fangio. I really want to see them get the ball early to Bradley across the middle, right, on a slant route where he is just absolutely dominant. Last year, he had 6 touchdowns, right? Not all of them came off of slants, but he had some big chunk plays off of these slant routes, right? He had at least 2 touchdowns off of these slant routes. He's just a big body wide receiver. I want an easy pitch and catch from Tyler Shuck to Bradley early on in this game, and I think that'll help create a little bit of momentum and have Wyoming realize, oh, crap. You know, like, hey, they got some dudes on this team, and I think Wyoming already knows that, but it's a different story when you actually get out there on the gridiron and have to defend them. But I actually kind of like Wyoming's secondary. I don't think they'll be able to hold up depth-wise against Texas Tech and the multitude of wide receivers Texas Tech and Zach Kittley will throw out there, but I actually do like them. The guy that I'm watching most will be Colby Traylor. He's actually from Houston, went from Houston to Wyoming. That's a hell of a trip, a little bit of a trip, I should say. For college, but he's up there. He's 6'4". He's a really long, rangy, good corner. I like him quite a bit. But drop your score predictions. Hey, David, that's what we like to see right there. Drop your score predictions right now and like the video. That's all I'm asking you to do. Just help me out a little bit, right? And if you want your question to be on the screen, just super chat us. For those that don't know who a super chat is or what a super chat is, you can see it right below the chat box. There's a little bit of a $ right there if you want to help support the show and get your comment on the screen. That's a great way to do so. Really appreciate it. I know I just appreciate you guys for coming in here and hanging out with me and chopping it up and being loyal listeners and everything. But that's another way to help support the show. And then if you want more Texas Tech gear, Home Field is the place to do it. Use the code BACK212 to get 15% off of your entire order. I have my favorite Texas Tech shirts from there. We'll actually be wearing them next week out in the 806 when I'm at the Oregon game. I hope to see some of y'all there. A little bit of an announcement for those that weren't in here earlier. I will have an announcement. I guess an announcement about an announcement. That's kind of annoying, but I guess that describes me well. I'll have an announcement about a potential get-together next week out in the 8:06 for the Oregon game that I want to put together. I do want to talk about this quote from Tyler Shuck, and I want to give credit. This is from Nathan Geese of the Lubbock Avalanche Journal. See it on Yahoo Sports. And it was about Tyler Shuck talking about Jerron Bradley. And this is the quote. Shuck said, he wants to be great. He's willing, he's grown, and obviously he's got the physical tools to go out there and be really good. Hall of Fame wide receiver, in my opinion. He has all the tools you need and one of those guys, and he's been great for us so far. Hall of Fame. Okay. I think he might be talking about the Texas Tech Hall of Fame. I don't know. I don't want to try and speak for Tyler Shuck. I will say this. I've been saying for a while that I think Jerron Bradley is a top 3 wide receiver in the Big 12. And that's saying something because I think everybody that's watching this live understands how good of wide receivers are in the Big 12. There's quite a few of them. Some of the names that come to mind, obviously you got JoJo Earl at TCU, who I like quite a bit. It's got to prove a little bit more. You got Xavier Worthy as well, right? But I think Jerron Bradley is right up there in the mix for that. And I actually had this stat, and I want to read it for you guys because I was pretty surprised when I actually saw this stat. And if you haven't followed me already, be sure to do so at RCMB323. It's right there on the screen on Twitter. I posted this yesterday after doing a little bit of a deep dive, more so on Jerron Bradley. And I'm posting geeky stats like this all the time on Twitter. So just another good reason to follow me because, well, I'm just a nerd at heart like everybody else, I feel like. I said Texas Tech wide receiver Jerron Bradley ranked 4th nationally in targets among sophomores last season with 85 targets, 7.14 per game. He was also 4th among sophomore wide receivers in reception yards with 744, with only a 15.1% target share, the lowest of anyone in the top 10. And the reason I bring up target share there is it's quite important in my opinion. Target share is very simple. For those that don't know what it is, it's basically how many times am I getting thrown the ball out of the percentage of the whole pie for my team, right? So in the NFL, great wide receivers are typically getting around 30% of the pie, right? Obviously at the college level and how much Texas Tech throws the football, great wide receivers are going to get a less percentage than that. But 15 is relatively low, right? Even for great wide receivers. And so I think that's going to change a little bit, even with the guys that they have this year, Texas Tech, who I think the wide receiver room is much more plentiful in the depth department. Let's say that. Still got to prove it, but there's plenty of talent and depth in there, right, to potentially prove it. But when you got Jerron Bradley in there, I think he's a guy when it's all said and done that I'm leaning more and more towards the sense that I would be pretty surprised if he doesn't get to 1,000 yards this year. And the reason being is this. If Texas Tech once again has QB issues in terms of the health department, you got Baron Morton, right? You got Tyler Shuck. I think they're going to be able to throw more because the offensive line is better, okay? I think they're going to be much more efficient offensively this year, which really plays into the favor of Jerron Bradley because he's just a big play wide receiver waiting to happen, and not to mention he's 6'5", right? So you think about that aspect of things, and that's a positive in his regard. I just think this is going to be one of those games on national television where Tyler Shuck, after everything positive that he's said about Jerron Bradley this whole offseason, I think this is going to be one of those games where he doesn't hyper-focus in on him, right? But he trusts him a lot more on those 50-50 balls, right? Because a 50-50 ball with Bradley in the vicinity is not 50-50. That's a 70-30 ball towards Bradley, right? With his frame, his hands, his go up and get it ability, the understanding of his body, right? He's that kind of guy. So I think that there's that. I think that 15% target share, it wouldn't surprise me if we're talking closer to 22 to 25, right, this year. And that's even with these new wide receivers who I think are going to be impactful, and even some of these guys that are returning who I expect to have bigger roles. Looking at you, Loic Fouonji, right? Just got to stay healthy. But I think Bradley is just simply one of those guys. I truly do. And so I think 15% is a little too low, and he just screams a guy, in my opinion, that is going to get a ton of targets this year. All right, let's read it. Fernando, He's got 41-9 Texas Tech. David Mitchell has 38-13. Fernando also says, let's go. Wreckham the brand. And then Lubbock elevation is 3,200 square feet. Yeah, it's, again, I'm not saying it's the mile-high city or anything, but that was the highest elevation in the Big 12 before they added some schools. So you got to think about that for perspective on this. And so, again, I don't think that Texas Tech is, right there with Wyoming in terms of the elevation. That's crazy. But there is at least a little bit of give there and not as much room to make up, if that makes sense. But yeah, that was an interesting quote from Tyler Shuck. Again, for those that missed it, he wants to be great, Shuck said. He's willing, he's grown, and obviously he's got the physical tools to go out there and be really good. Hall of Fame wide receiver, in my opinion. He has all the tools you need in one of those guys, and he's been great for us so far. Again, I'm not sure exactly what Hall of Fame he's talking about, and I'm not trying to belittle a dude, but Jerron Bradley, he's definitely got the tools to be one of those guys in the Big 12. I definitely agree with that. Again, got a few more people in here. Like the video if you haven't already. If you want to get your question answered here later on, leave it in the chat. And if you want to have priority access, super chat it. Hit that $ right below the chat right there. It really helps the show out. And obviously, we appreciate y'all spending some of your Thursday night here with us on the Back to 12 podcast channel. We'll do that Q&A here in about, let's say 20 minutes. So again, get that comment section going, get the chat going in terms of your questions and everything, going back and forth with each other. Should be quite a bit of fun here in just a little bit. Again, a little bit more on the preview for this game. Injury-wise, Texas Tech is in relatively good shape. Only 2 guys are out officially for this game, and that's tight end Charles Robinson with an ankle, and then you got wide receiver Coy Aiken with a collarbone. He's out until probably West Virginia, according to Joey McGuire. Nehemiah Martinez will travel with the team after getting into a little altercation in practice with a teammate, had an eye injury, but he, according to Joey McGuire, has a chance to play against Wyoming if everything goes right in terms of the lead up to the game. As for the Cowboys of Wyoming, their projected starting running back, Harrison Whaley, is still coming back from a knee injury sustained last year. He will be out for this game. And really, when I look at this, right, if Wyoming can't run the football, they're not going to move the ball. They're just not. And unless there's just a drastic increase in production from their quarterback, Andrew Peasley, who in 2022 threw for 10 touchdowns, 9 interceptions, had a 52.4 completion percentage, and just over 1,500 yards, and did so on about 275 pass attempts, right? Not trying to knock him too much. That's just not going to cut it, right? Against the secondary that Texas Tech is bringing in, that front that Texas Tech is bringing, there's going to be a lot of quick passes for Wyoming in this game. So I'm very interested to see, how do the linebackers adjust? Jacob Rodriguez, Josiah Pierre moving from outside to inside, adjusted his body, Joey McGuire has said, this offseason. How does Steve Linton look? Myles Cole, they're in bigger roles now. We know how the 2 big guys in the middle of that defensive line are going to look in Bradford and Hutchings, right? You think about the secondary. You've got a guy in Braylon Lux who's really been the talk of the camp when it comes to the secondary. It's a 3-headed monster when it comes to the DBs for Texas Tech, all guys that have experience playing at a high level in college, including Rashad Williams, Malik Dunlap, and the previously mentioned Braylon Lux. And then I haven't even started talking about the safeties yet in the star position. At star, you bring in a guy who I'm probably most excited about on this defense, and that's CJ Baskerville, the San Diego State transfer. He's 6'3", 215, and runs like a gazelle and can go downhill, be impactful in the run game, can go play center field, go sideline to sideline. He is the perfect replacement for a guy like Muddy Waters, in my opinion. Then you have Tyler Owens come in. He'll be your starting safety back there in the back at the free safety spot, kind of your center fielder, long-rangey guy. Remember, he transferred in from UT a couple years ago, and now he gets his shot to be the starting safety for the Red Raiders. And then, of course, you got Rabbit. He will replace Reggie Pearson, who left for Oklahoma. He'll come down and really impact things at a multitude of levels of that defense. So I like the experience Texas Tech has, and I also like the fact that there are multiple chess pieces on this defense for Tim DeRuyter, a guy that we know loves to mix things up in the blitz packages, in the run game as well. He's really good at it, but really when it comes down to it for me, I'm watching Miles Cole and Steve Linton. I want to see how much they can set the edge when it comes to the run game and that sideline to sideline passing game, which I think Wyoming is going to use, right? But I also want to see how much they can get to the quarterback because, again, they're not going to come in here and be Tyree Wilson. They're not. If that's your expectation, I'm sorry. It's not going to happen. I don't think it's fair to place that on anybody. But they can come in here and be meaningful guys. And I think, again, one of my bold predictions for the entire season, again, bold, was Steve Linton leading the Big 12 in sacks with 11 and a half plus. So getting to 12 sacks on the year is what I think Steve Linton will do. Again, appreciate everybody listening. Get your questions in. But yeah, let's talk about it. We got Roger here. He has a long career. Yeah. I assume, Roger, you're talking about Andrew Peasley there. But I could be wrong. Matt with his score prediction, 45-24 Texas Tech. From John, guns up, guys. Appreciate you being here, John. Yeah, honestly, appreciate each and every one of you guys being in here for this. Again, going to talk keys to the game now after doing a little bit of a preview there. But also, let me talk about the odds. Texas Tech as it stands right now. And for those that don't know, I'll have a odds video coming out for the entire Big 12 slate every Friday here on the channel. So that will be the video here tomorrow. Again, 7 days straight, or 7 videos, I should say, this week already when it comes to content. That doesn't even include the recap that's going to happen after the Wyoming game. So if you want the latest Texas Tech news, rumors, and everything in between, hit that subscribe button and join the fastest growing community of Red Raider fans here on YouTube on the Back to 12 podcast channel. All right, odds-wise, spread, Texas Tech -14. I've also seen -14.5. But as it stands right now on Caesar Sportsbook, it is -14. Now, this is interesting. Did the preview earlier in the week. The total was at minus at 51.5 for the total, right? It is now at 50.5. I'm taking that. I like that. That is my favorite bet right there. It was my favorite bet at 51.5. I like it at 50.5 more. Because I think Texas Tech, I think there's a possibility. Again, I think Wyoming is a solid team for the Mountain West, right? But I think there's a chance Texas Tech puts a 50 burger on them. Like they're trying to prove a point here, right? Like I think Texas Tech is trying to do that this weekend up in Laramie. Am I saying it's likely? No, but I also think that there is a chance that they just come out and they just beat the ever-living. Well, let me drink my beer so I don't have to say that word real quick. Y'all know what I was trying to say. All right. Keys to the game for those that may have missed it. Again, we're going to be doing these lives every Thursday here on the channel. So y'all are going to want to get in the groove of that. Next week should be a lot of fun leading up to that Oregon game. Well, I will be actually out there in the 806. If you will be out there for the Oregon game, like the video and tell me in the chat. Let me know. This from Roger real quick. I'm curious to see what Wyoming's runs on offense to be so bad at the quarterback position or so long. Even Josh Allen struggled with accuracy in their system. I find it hard to believe it's based on short passes. Yeah, so this is how it is for me. When I watch their film, they're obviously run first. I think everybody knows that when you look at their offense and just how unproductive Peasley was really last year. But like, they try and take their chances, it seems like, downfield. But it almost feels like to me with a team like Texas Tech, who I think is going to be able to get after the quarterback, right? I think they're going to be able to get after Peasley. They're going to have to throw shorter. They're just not going to be able to throw, right? Like, I think Tim DeRuyter on that first drive, he's going to send a blitz or two, and he's going to see how comfortable Wyoming is, specifically Peasley, at the quarterback position, right? Like, that's what I think happens because he knows that Wyoming is going to try to run the football. He knows that, right? So he's going to try to make it to where they can only run the football. Like, I think that's their only course of action, unless it's, 3rd and 10 or whatnot. But until they have to throw the ball if the game gets out of hand. But I think that that's really what it comes down to. Roger also said, if we can shut down their offense, perfectly realistic, we could put a lot of points on the scoreboard against their solid D. Yeah, I think the best thing Wyoming has going for them is their defense. That's not a debate. They have a really solid defensive line. Their secondary is old. Again, I really like Colby Traylor. He's going to get his first real shot to be in that secondary for the Cowboys. But again, it's a Mountain West defense. And I'm not trying to shit on a Mountain West defense or anything, but at the end of the day, Texas Tech is bringing back 18 starters from their Texas Bowl win. They're experienced, they're deep, they're explosive. I think this should be one of those games where Texas Tech gets out pretty quickly in this one and ends up winning in that. I think I might even be too low on it, but like that 35-20, and the reason being they only get to 20. Wyoming even gets to 20 is because they score late. I think Texas Tech just absolutely dominates in this game. All right, let's talk about the 3 keys to the game for those that may have missed the video earlier in the week. First key is tempo, tempo, tempo. And that seems obvious, but it's something that Joey McGuire and Zach Kittley have stressed all offseason. They want to go fast, and they did so last year too, just because, well, again, they led the country in plays per game at 89.2. That was 9 more than the second closest team in Buffalo. Okay, now I don't expect there to be a ton of change in that, right? Like, do I think they run close to 90 plays again this year? Probably not, just because of the clock changing a little bit, but I don't think it's that drastically different. I mean, I'm talking maybe 4 or 5 plays, and that's absolute tops. I think they're probably going to be in that 86, 87 range. But it will be a factor, that clock. I think we're going to see a little bit more of it in terms of the clock not stopping until the 2-minute aspect of the quarters after a first down. So there's that. And we know Texas Tech likes to go fast, as I just mentioned. So I'm interested to see how that really works. And this week 1 is going to be more indicative, because last week it didn't feel like much changed. If anything changed at all, it went faster. Like, there was more plays, right? But there was also the Navy game with Notre Dame, and obviously that game's going to be slower. But then you got the USC side of things. This week we'll get to see a little bit more in depth in terms of these rule changes and if there is any kind of impact on them. But I think the most important aspect of this when it comes to tempo is simply this: keeping the Cowboys on their heels, because Texas Tech has vastly more depth at every position than the Cowboys do, mainly on the offensive side up against their defense. And if they can dominate the offensive line of scrimmage and get no pass rush to Tyler Shuck, which I kind of expect to happen, that's just going to leave all day for guys like Dre McCray to be open down the field, Miles Price to create separation, Loic Fouonji, Jerron Bradley, so on and so forth, right? So that's one thing I'm really looking for in terms of Texas Tech for keys to this game. Let's look at the comments real quick before we go to the next one. Oh, it's Roger again. Roger, I appreciate you tuning in, man. I love you, Roger. I'm going to say that. Last time Wyoming played a team as good as Texas Tech on their home field, they gave up 41. I don't really notice the clock during the Louisiana Tech game and Sonny Cumbie's appearance. That is fair too. Sonny Cumbie was going quick, but it was 1 week as well. This from CT3K, there will be at least 250-plus yard touchdowns on Saturday. I'm assuming from the Red Raiders. So there you go. Oh, and the team that dropped 41 on them in Laramie was Mike Leach's Washington State. Okay, there we go. So not the exact same offense, but it's replicable, right? Like you can see the similarities in that. All right, next key to the game for me. And again, get your questions in for the Q&A here later. I appreciate everybody tuning in right now. We will be doing live videos every Thursday. I assume next week is going to be a big one with Oregon coming out to the 806. But key to the game, number 2 for Texas Tech at Wyoming. Texas Tech must dominate the defensive line of scrimmage and get pressure, okay? If you can just eliminate the Wyoming running attack, and we talked about this just a little bit earlier, they're cooked, right? Like it's that simple for me, right? And you've got guys that are experienced, because Steve Linton and Miles Cole, yes, they're new to their spots on this team in terms of being the starters, right? But let's face it, they're pretty experienced. Remember, Miles Cole transferred in from ULM. He's been at Texas Tech for a while now. Steve Linton, he played 4 years at Syracuse. He's coming in now and starting for Texas Tech. And you look at everything that they've done on the defensive line to solidify depth. They got Blake Burris. You've got Data Ray. You've got Ledet. You've got multiple guys here that you can come in and rotate in and really make an impact in the sense that there's not that drastic level of drop off. That's all I care about. Do I expect Demarion Banks to be Jalen Hutchins? No. Do I expect him to be Tony Bradford? No. But if he's 75%, 80% of Tony Bradford, that's huge for Texas Tech in terms of keeping Tony Bradford and Jalen Hutchins healthy long term, right? And that's the big thing for Texas Tech, because if Texas Tech wants to really get to where they want to go, which we all expect is Arlington, they've said so. I mean, it's just that's what they've been saying all off season, right? Those two guys are going to have to carry them in the middle of that defensive line. So having depth and impactful depth is something that Texas Tech hasn't had in a long time. And I think you're going to see it on full display against the Cowboys and really ramp them up for that game against the Ducks in week 2. And I know I keep bringing up Oregon. Don't get it twisted. Texas Tech is focused on the Cowboys. Like, they 100% are focused on Wyoming. So I wouldn't worry about that too much on that front. One more time before I get a couple more points in here about dominate the defensive line of scrimmage. Like the video if you were liking the daily Texas Tech videos here on the channel. We've got really one of the most interactive Big 12 channels here on YouTube. Really having fun with you guys, talking day in and day out sports. I know a lot of people don't agree with my opinion sometimes, but I think that that's actually what kind of makes it great. So again, like the video if you want more Texas Tech content daily on your feed. All right. When it comes down to it, right, like I mentioned it a little bit more or a little bit just a second ago, but it's that 1-0 mindset. Don't get it twisted. Texas Tech is very much focused on Wyoming. I don't think Joey McGuire would allow these guys not to be. And the reason I say that is you have to think about what this team has right now, okay? And they have an opportunity that a Texas Tech team hasn't had since Mike Leach was on campus. And that's a legit shot to potentially go to Arlington and play for the Big 12 title, right? You think about the reasons why. Coaching, first and foremost, the culture that these guys have created, phenomenal. And you got to give credit to the players for that as well. The players, they're old as hell. And I mean that in a nice way, right? Like Texas Tech is old, right? You're old at damn near every position, right? You got a bunch of super seniors coming back. You think about this. When you look at the starting depth chart for Texas Tech, the guys that are actually starting, right? There are only 4 juniors. 4 juniors or lower, right? And the lone sophomore you had is a redshirt sophomore, and he's your best wide receiver in Jerron Bradley. You're old, and it's good. That's a good thing. And your depth is old too at certain spots, right? So I think that that's big, and that plays into the narrative of the 1-0 mindset, which is these guys are going to be focused on the task at hand. They're not going to look ahead. Like, listen, they know if they don't beat Wyoming, Oregon is meaningless in the grand scheme of things in terms of what they want to do long term. They need to go into Big 12 play 3-0. That's their goal when it comes down to it, and that's a whole brand new season. But each and every week, in terms of what is their each week goal, it's 1-0. And Joey McGuire has stressed that over and over and over again. And if you go into the Oregon game 0-1 after a loss to Wyoming, a lot of that shine wears off and everything like that. And these guys don't want that. They don't care about the shine anyway. Let's be real. They care more about the expectations that they put upon themselves and the goals that they have long term. But the first aspect of that to get to that goal is they have to beat Wyoming. And I think they do in the long run as well. Again, get your questions in to the chat. Keep the chat going right now. Really appreciate everybody tuning in. I'm going to get a drink real quick. Sorry. Pacifico. What is everybody else drinking tonight? Anybody else drinking? It's college football season now. Probably should wait till Saturday, but here we are. Refreshing. All right. Let's see here. What we got? We got Fernando. Wyoming is starting a freshman and 2 redshirt sophomores on their O-line. Yep. Yeah, and the 2 guys that they bring back, I will admit, they're pretty solid on their offensive line. The 2 guys that have, I guess, had the most experience for them is probably the best way to say it. pretty good, but they haven't played a defensive line like Texas Tech. They just haven't. Roger agrees with that. This from Drew, going to the Oregon game with some Oregon fans. Haven't been in years. Need restaurant recommendations. People, drop some restaurant recommendations in the chat for Drew right there. Man, I'm going to be going to Jazz while I'm out there. Love Jazz on 19th Street. That was a staple for me when I was out there. So that was one of my favorites. What else do we want to go to? Oh, I'm going with the Future In-Laws. So maybe Triple J's for me. Love that place. Yeah, there's so many good restaurants out in Lubbock. That's one thing I truly miss about Lubbock is the restaurants. The Thai pepper's good. Might head out there. I know the fiance don't want to do that, but there's a ton. Evie Mae's is a great one as well. If you're trying to stay closer and maybe to the action and maybe go for some bar food while staying close to campus, I like Atomic quite a bit. They got really good pizza. It's right there by Chimmy's, by the Seal off Broadway, so that's a good place as well. But drop some reps for Drew in there in the chat. Good one from Roger there, though. Let's see. CT3K, rabbit over under 3.5 pass breakups. I'm going to go under. I'm going to go under on that. That's for sure. But I do think that the reason being is not because of rabbit. I just don't know how good of, well, their quarterback is, if I'm being honest. Roger also said this: Jalen Hutching and Tony Bradford have 13 years of experience between them, grown-ass men. Yeah. And the crazy part is this. Like, you got to think, like, if those guys have that much experience, you got to think about the aspect of, well, now you add Miles Cole into that. Now you add Steve Linton, right? We're talking about damn near 20 years of experience in D1 football for your starting defensive line, which is crazy. Christopher says, you're an excellent coach. Play one game at a time. Yep. Christopher said, lemonade, peach tea. Oh, okay. What makes you nervous about Wyoming? This from Christopher. It's the run game, simple and plain. If Texas Tech can't stop the run, which I don't have a lot of fear that they can't, but there is a scenario where it does happen, right? If they can't stop the run, that's how Wyoming dictates the pace of play in this game and really kind of controls the narrative of how the clock goes and how drives go and if Texas Tech needs to press or not, right? But I think that that's really what scares me the most. Also, their secondary. Again, I'm high on Tech's wide receivers, but I'm also high on the secondary, for Wyoming. Like, they've got some really good guys back there. Three returning starters, And then you got Colby Traylor, who I mentioned a couple times. Like, they got some really solid guys back there that provide some length. So those are really the two aspects that really stand out to me in terms of areas where the Cowboys could potentially create some headaches for Texas Tech. The two big ones anyway. This from Drew. What's the taco / Mexican place? See, Drew, that's like picking one of my children. And I don't even have any children. So I'll say this. It really depends on what you mean by Mexican food. Do you mean Tex-Mex? I think there's some really great Tex-Mex places here. I'll also say this. There's not very many bad choices when it comes to Mexican food in Lubbock, Texas. There's just not. Jalisco's is one of my favorite. It's off of, I believe, Avenue Q and 19th. Don't hold me to the 19th. But it's over by a Dairy Queen. That place is electric. Absolutely love it. Great price points as well. Typically, I'd go in there for myself. I'd get myself a beer, as well as, enchiladas and all that kind of stuff, and I'd be out of there less than $15. So I thought it was fantastic food as well. So that's one of my favorite places. Christopher says, I already have tickets for Houston game. There you go. Roger also says, as Joey pointed out, we were even bigger favorites 30 years ago, favored by 17 and lost. That will put everything in perspective. Yeah, no, and I think that's the thing that this team, and maybe that's the reason I'm so confident in this team. I think that there's real perspective right? Like that's something that I don't think can go untalked about with this Texas Tech team right now is they have perspective from the standpoint of experience. And a lot of these guys know, hey, this is going to be one of the best choices or the best chances I have to really make my imprint on this. And Roger, that's an awful take. Jalisco's is great. It's great. It's great. Oh, I read that wrong, Roger. I apologize. I read it wrong. That's on me. Roger's 100% correct. Jalisco's is awesome. I read Aces is ass. I'm sorry. I'll tell you where my mind is right now. Christopher, I agree. Anything food wise in Lubbock is incredible. And then Fernando, he says, how many turnover sacks and tackles for loss for the Texas Tech defense? Ooh, turnovers. I'm going to say 3. Variety of them. My gut is telling me there's a pick 6 by somebody on Saturday. I just don't. Watching the Wyoming quarterback, and again, I'm not trying to pile on the guy, but man, it's difficult to watch sometimes their offense. Sacks wise, I don't want to go too crazy or anything. Probably like, I don't know, 4.5. I don't want to go too crazy. And then tackles for loss, I think that's where things get interesting. I think you could see up to like 7.5, 8, because again, they're going to run the football, and if you get them in the backfield, tackle for loss. There you go. Roger says, a shame we only have steak. I mean, I hear they have steak and salmon up in Chicago too, but somebody's going to have to, make sure that's the truth and whatnot. I don't really go up there too much, but best luck to him in all of his endeavors. If you know, kind of thing. Again, get your questions in. We'll do a little bit more of the Q&A here in just a second. And again, if you want some of the best Texas Tech gear out there, go to homefieldapparel.com. I'll have a link down in the description below. Use the code BACK212 and get 15% off your total order. All right. These are some of the most comfortable Tech shirts I own. My fiance is in love with hers. I love mine. You'll love yours too. Go get your new favorite Texas Tech shirt over at Home Field Apparel. All right. Let's look at the comments here real quick. Number of total yards defense gives up. Let's play some games here. I'll use this, Christopher. Let's have some fun here, okay? Let's set the total over-under of yards for Texas Tech defense given up against Wyoming at 249.5. Just type in O for under or O for over, U for under, excuse me. All right, Roger, I wouldn't wish playing for DePaul basketball my worst enemy. Brutal. Yeah, I mean, everybody has their choices, man. It's just one of those things. And again, I know how many people are in here right now, okay? We don't have that many likes. Like the video. Come on, people. What are we doing here? I know you're liking it. You got to stay here. You're staying here. Hit that like button. Come on. All right. CT3K is saying under. Christopher 250. Okay, gotcha. Roger says Weezy gave up 4 passing yards in their season opener. I'm gonna take the over. I'm gonna take the over on 4 yards passing given up. I know I'm a bold man for that, but I'm gonna take the over right there, Roger. I'm just a bold man. Call me bold, whatever you want. Yeah, I mean, it is what it is on that front. That was wild, though. That was probably the craziest stat of the entire weekend. Like, legitimately. That was freaking insane. That they only gave up 4 yards passing. Truly insane. Again, let me know your prediction in the chat. Let me know. In terms of your score prediction for Texas Tech at Wyoming. Only going to go a couple more minutes, so get those last second questions in. Yeah, I appreciate you guys spending some time with me right before week 1 kicks off. I'm so excited. I don't care what it is, man. Like, let me go on a spiel here, people. I think as I've gotten older, I have realized how much I love college football. And now I know college football is going to change quite a bit here. And really already has, but even more so here in the next couple of years. But man, do I just love college football? Do I love college basketball? I I just love it, man. Like, don't get me wrong, I like pro sports too. But I was talking about this with one of my buddies yesterday, and I said, I think really what the reason I like pro sports more than anything outside of my favorite team is just the fantasy aspect of it. Um, and I don't know. I don't know. That's just me. Um, when it comes down to it, maybe I'm the crazy one on that front. Um, can everybody hear me? Fernando said he couldn't hear me. Is it just me? Is my mic messing up? Hello? Hello? Let me know in the chat if y'all can still hear me. Sorry if I just yelled and blew out your speakers there. That's on me. But I do think that that's something that really has started to, as I've gotten older, I've realized like, man, I really freaking do love um, college football, man. So it doesn't even matter who's playing. Like I watched the UMass game. Like I watched the UMass game last weekend. By the way, shout out to UMass getting their first win in over 2 years. Shout out to the Minutemen down there in New Mexico, Las Cruces, I believe. But yeah, I just love college football, man. It's so much freaking fun. And I am going to have a hell of a Saturday. And I think this is a good point as we start to wrap this up. If you're going to be in the 806 next weekend, I will be announcing on my Twitter here soon a get together I'm going to be having. I just want to go out and meet all the people that are awesome enough to hang out with me on these chats or these live streams, I guess I should say. Watch my videos, interact with me on Twitter. Like, I just want to hang out with you guys before one of the biggest games in the 806 and I mean, maybe 15 years. Who knows what your opinion is on that front. But I just want to hang out with y'all, have a couple beers, then head over to the stadium and hopefully watch Texas Tech roast some duck on national television. So should be quite a bit of fun. I'm very excited for it. Man, I'm just so happy to have college football back. It is so much fun. And Roger, you are 100% right. Texas Tech is good in virtually every sport. It's year-round excitement. Yeah, maybe they're not the best of the best, but you're 100% right. They're good at least, and that makes things a lot more enjoyable, especially when you cover and you create content around them as well. It makes it a lot easier to do so on that front. Again, if you haven't already, be sure to hit that subscribe button to stay in the know on Texas Tech football all year long. Listen, you can see it at the bottom of the screen. This is what we're going to be giving you every week and then some during the football season. Lyle Leong and I will be doing film breakdowns. I'll be giving you game previews, 3 keys to the game, and much, much more. Hit that subscribe button and like the video to join the most engaging Texas Tech community here on YouTube. Again, over 8,600 subscribers right now. Whole lot of freaking fun, man. I'll tell you guys that. I did not expect 8,600, but we're well on our way to 10K by the end of the year, and it's all because of you guys. So really appreciate each and every one of you. I think that's going to do it for me tonight. Thank y'all for tuning in. Again, we're going to be doing these every Thursday live, and I have a feeling next week it's going to be a big one as Texas Tech gets ready to play a top 15 team out in the 806 in the Oregon Ducks. And I don't know, there might be a storyline or two about the quarterbacks or something. Probably not, though. Probably not. I haven't looked too much into it. Haven't heard a lot about it. Just saying. But I'm RC Maxfield reminding you, if you haven't already, be sure to hit that subscribe button to stay in the know on Texas Tech football all year long right here on your one-stop shop for everything Texas Tech. Of course, I'm talking about the Back to 12 podcast channel.